Hello and welcome back in everybody, Levi here, and today I got a brand new deck tech out of the new Fallout set. This one is not focused around any specific commander, however, I am focusing around a set of artifacts that came out in the Fallout set. I am referring to, of course, the Bobbleheads. So the commander that you can pick for your deck could vary if you don't want to pick the ones I did, but I wanted to pick some commanders, in my case, 2 commanders, they both have partner, that synergize with the Bobbleheads and the strategy that I'm trying to do here. So I'll go over the commanders here. First up is Rebbec, Architect of Ascension, 3 and a white for a 3/4 human artificer. Artifacts you control have protection from each converted mana cost among artifacts you control. So seeing as this is a artifact-centric deck, I think it's very likely that we'll have mana value 1 through 4 on the field. Therefore, all of our artifacts are pretty much safe from pinpoint removal. Board wipes is a little bit of a different story, but that's where our second commander comes in. Silas Renn, Seeker Adept, 1 blue-black for a 2/2 artifact creature human, has Death Touch. It also says whenever Silas Renn, Seeker Adept deals combat damage to a player, choose target artifact card in your graveyard and you may cast that card this turn. So a little bit later in the game, if our Rebbec did not succeed in protecting our Bobbleheads, we can get them out of the graveyard with our Silas. It doesn't have evasion, however, it does have Death Touch, which is kind of a form of evasion. It's likely that you'll be able to get through to one of your opponents with the Silas Renn and be able to deal combat damage. Let me just quickly go over a couple of the Bobbleheads so you kind of understand what they all do. I won't go over all of them, just some of the most important ones. First up, Intelligence Bobblehead, 3 mana for an artifact Bobblehead. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. That's what all of them do. And they all have their own activated abilities. The Intelligence one says, pay 5 mana, tap, draw X cards, where X is the number of Bobbleheads you control. So if you have all 7, you can draw 7 cards with 5 mana, which is a pretty good rate. However, there is a way that you can get more than 7 Bobbleheads, which I'll go into a little bit later. But next up, I have Perception Bobblehead. This one has pay 3 mana, tap, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of Bobbleheads you control. You may cast a spell with mana value 3 or less from among them without paying its mana cost, and you put the rest on the bottom. So this one helps us find our other Bobbleheads. The more we get out, the more we'll be able to dig for our other Bobbleheads. The only bad part about this one is if you happen to look at the top, how say 3 or whatever, and 2 Bobbleheads are in there, you can only get 1 and the other one goes on the bottom. I did put in some tutors in the deck in case that would happen so you don't get kind of screwed and not having all your Bobbleheads out. But the last one I'm going to be talking about here is kind of the crux of the deck. This one is Luck Bobblehead. It says pay 1, tap, roll X 6-sided dice, where X is the number of Bobbleheads you control. Create a tapped treasure token for each even result. If you rolled 6 exactly 7 times, then you win the game. So reading the Luck Bobblehead is kind of where I got the idea for the entire deck. You know, I'll go into it a little bit later, but I'm obviously going to be copying the Bobbleheads because they're not legendary, so you can get multiple copies. The more Bobbleheads you have, the higher odds that you're going to be able to roll 6 exactly 7 times. That is just one of the win cons that I have in the deck. I just really like that all the Bobbleheads give you a little bit of value. Even if you don't have all of them out, they still help you propel your strategy a little bit forward. I also threw in a couple other collections in the deck that if you would happen to have all your Bobbleheads out and you draw something like one of your tutors that would go get an artifact, but you have your Bobbleheads, I wanted to have something else to go grab in case we already have all of them. So first up, I'll go over the Empires series. Crown of Empires, 2 mana artifact, pay 3 and tap target creature, gain control of that creature instead if you control artifacts named Scepter of Empires and Throne of Empires. So let me go over the other 2 here. The Scepter is a 3 mana artifact. You tap it. Scepter of Empires deals 1 damage to target player, and then it deals 3 if you control the other 2. And then the Throne is 4 mana artifact, pay 1, tap, put a 1/1 white soldier creature token on the battlefield, but you put 5 instead if you have the other 2. So your opponents are going to be having a hard time getting through all of the tokens you're making and all the damage you're shooting around and stealing their best creature with the crown. It's just really good value. That's not the only ones I threw in the deck, though. I also threw in the Vecna series. Let me go over the 3 here. Eye of Vecna, 2 mana legendary artifact. When Eye of Vecna enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose 2 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2. If you do, you draw a card and you lose 2 life. So it's a little bit of card draw on your upkeep, a little bit like a worse Phyrexian Arena. However, it does synergize with our other 2 pieces. Next up is Hand of Vecna, 3 mana legendary artifact equipment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, equipped creature or a creature you control named Vecna gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your hand. It has 2 equip costs. You can either pay 1 life for each card in your hand, or you can equip for just 2 generic mana. And the third and most important piece of this one is the Book of Vile Darkness. Black for a legendary artifact. At the beginning of your end step, if you lost 2 or more life this turn, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and you can tap it and exile it and the other 2, the eye and the hand, to create Vecna, a legendary 8/8 black zombie god creature token with indestructible, and it gains all triggered abilities of the exiled artifacts. So that being the card draw from the eye, +X from the hand, and the zombie tokens from the book. So that's another way we could be ending the game, is with our giant indestructible Indestructible God, who gives us a bunch of cool benefits, and that rounds out our collection series. Next up, the second most important part of the deck is our copy effects. So obviously the bobbleheads all care about having more bobbleheads. They don't care about like the named ones or whatever. As long as you have more bobbleheads, the better they are. So I'll go over some copy effects I have in the deck. Echo Storm up first is a really good one considering we have partner commanders, so this will get better the more we cast our partners. 3 blue sorcery. Whenever you cast this spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. You may choose new targets for the copies, and you obviously just create a token that's a copy of target artifacts. So if you just cast both your commanders only once, you get 3 copies of Echo Storm, the original and the 2 copies. That means 3 more bobbleheads just for 5 mana. And if it's a little bit later in the game when you draw the Echo Storm, say you've cast both your commanders twice, that's 5 total copies, and that's insane value for 5 mana. I really like these Storm cards when it comes to having partner commanders. So if you have one, even if you're not building this deck, if you have a partner deck, look at the Storm cards. There's a whole cycle of them. A little bit slower and a little bit scarier. Your opponents might actually want to get this one off the board because it could end up killing them. Mechanized Production, 2 blue for an aura. Enchant artifact you control, and at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. So another you win the game clause. There's a few of them in the deck. This one's more just so we get those bobbleheads on every one of our upkeeps, as opposed to really trying to win the game with this. You know, in some other decks, like I have this in my clue deck, I really want to wait until I have those 8 clues and then slam it down, either flash it out or put it down and just hope that they don't have removal before I get to my next turn. But this one, I feel like in this deck, you want to put it down as soon as you can. That way you're just pumping out those bobbleheads every single turn. And I have a little one shot here. Sculpting Steel is a great one. 3 mana artifact, another one you can get off of your Perception bobblehead. You may have Sculpting Steel enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. So that one's pretty obvious. Last one I'm talking about here. This one isn't exactly copying the bobbleheads, but it's copying the activated abilities of the bobbleheads. So Rings of Brighthearth, 3 mana artifact. Whenever you activate an ability, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 2. If you do, copy that ability and choose new targets for the copy. So say you run this with your luck bobblehead, that's another chance to win the game off the dice roll. You know, the intelligence draws you more cards, the perception digs again to try and get more of those bobbleheads out from your library. So there's so many activated abilities in the deck that Rings of Brighthearth is an auto include. And then of course, since we are tapping down our bobbleheads to get their effects, having some untappers in the deck is really crucial. First up, Aphetto Alchemist, 1 and a blue for a 1/2 wizard. It says tap, untap target artifact or creature, and has morph for a blue. I don't think you'll ever be using the morph, but I guess you could if you wanted to. Another fantastic one here because it's also an artifact, a little bit harder to remove. Voltaic Key, 1 mana artifact, pay 1 and tap, untap target artifact. And last one here, Voltaic Servant, 2 mana, 1/3 artifact creature construct. At the beginning of your end step, you untap target artifact. Just a couple card draw spells to talk about here. First up, Monumental Corruption, 3 black for a sorcery. Target player draws X cards and loses X life, where X is the number of artifacts you control. This could either be a win con or a draw spell depending on the timing in the game and how many artifacts you do have out. I do also have the artifact land, so that does add up to the count of total artifacts you have. A little bit later in the game, if an opponent has less life than the amount of artifacts you have, then this is just a 5 mana kill spell. Probably the best card draw spell in the deck though, Vedalken Archmage, 2 blue for a 0/2 Vedalken Wizard. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you draw a card. So obviously I'm sure you've noticed by now, I've talked about several $3, $4, $5 cards. So this is obviously not a super budget deck. We're not gonna be able to see until the Fallout set comes out what the total deck is going to be costing because we don't know the price of the bobbleheads. The pre-order pricing is a little high right now, and I expect that to drop a little bit. Some of them are around $5, $10, some of them are around $1 or $2. So I guess we'll see once that comes out how budget this deck really is. Last up, the utility category, just talking about some cards that help propel our strategy a little bit forward, but don't exactly fit into some of the other categories. First up, a new one out of Karlov Manor, Forensic Gadgeteer, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Vedalken Artificer Detective, a lot of creature types there. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate, so it could be a little bit of card draw if we need it. However, the most important part is activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. That's really helpful for some of our bobbleheads that cost a little bit more to activate, like the intelligence one. That'll be costing 4 instead of 5 to draw cards, which is really effective. Obviously, this can't reduce the mana to less than 1, so the luck one obviously doesn't reduce the cost, but most of the other ones it does, so it's a really good one. In a similar vein, Karn, Living Legacy, 4 mana for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. The +1 is the important one. Create a tapped Power Stone token, which gives us a mana rock, basically, that you can either cast artifact spells or activate artifact abilities. That's the one we're going to be using. So the -1 is pay any amount of mana, look at that many cards from the top of your library, then put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order. So again, similar to the Perception bobblehead, this could be digging for some of our bobbleheads. And the ult is a -7. You get an emblem with tap and untap artifact you control. This emblem deals 1 damage to any target. So again, another alt win con in the deck. I don't foresee this being a very hard deck to win with. You know, it is a little janky with how it's built. You know, you're trying to just get all these bobbleheads and copy them and then get some value off of some of your other cards. But there's so many like I win clauses, like with the Karn ult or the luck bobblehead, the mechanized production. I feel like this is probably one of the most win cons that I've put in a single deck. So it seems like it would be pretty strong. Got one of those tutors I was talking about here. Moonsilver Key is a slam dunk here. 2 mana artifact, pay 1, tap, sacrifice it. Search your library for an artifact card with a mana ability or a basic land card. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. So this tutors exactly for what we need. One of our bobbleheads because they all tap for mana. Another tutor here. Trophy Mage, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human wizard. When it ETBs, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 3. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Again, just another tutor from one of our bobbleheads or possibly one of our other pieces from one of our other collections. And last but not least, the last card I'm talking about here, Tezzeret, Betrayer of Flesh, one of my favorite planeswalkers. 2 blue for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. The first activated ability of an artifact you activate each turn costs 2 less to activate. We can save our bobblehead, so on everybody's turn we can activate one and they all cost 2 less. This one does not specify that it can't cost less than 1. So with the luck bobblehead, you can tap it for free. Also, the loyalty abilities are really good. That one's just a static one. The +1 is draw 2 cards, then discard 2 unless you discard an artifact. If you have a mana rock, you can just discard that a little bit later if you don't need it. The -2, target artifact becomes an artifact creature. If it isn't a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 4/4. So I guess you can call that an alt win con. Makes big creatures out of some of our artifacts a little bit later. However, an extremely powerful ultimate on this one. -6, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card. Just fantastic value out of this 4 mana planeswalker, and it's super budget at only like 30 cents or something like that. That's pretty much it for my Silas Renn and Rebbec deck. I really like how this one turned out. Not sure if I'm going to be building this in person. I guess I'm going to have to wait to see how expensive the bobbleheads end up being. If they're only a couple bucks, I think it's reasonable, but for my personal budget restrictions, I don't foresee myself building it if it's over $100 like this. Maybe in the future I can like pick them up as I go and build it later if I still want to, but I just like the theme. I like the bobbleheads. I like all the abilities, the activate abilities, the copying artifact thing. It's such a cool, unique build. Plus you got the other collections in the deck. If you wanted to throw in the Cauldra collection as well, you could do that, find some room for that, but it just seemed a little too over the top for me and I didn't really think I needed that one. So let me know what you guys think about this build down in the comments. Go ahead and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this type of content. I have the Architect link down in the description below if you'd like to see my full list, but that is all I got for you today, guys. So thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you next time. All right, take care.